Sam Harris would also say Christianity is irrational, but then at the same time, you make the claim, well, that's preventing me from doing all the shit you're considering irrational, though.
Listen, I'm right with you.
And then he goes, wait a second, that's true. That's the problem, right? It's like...
Have you debated him yet?
No, they're setting it up, apparently.
Oh, good.
I don't know how anybody could ever believe any of the shit he believes. It's going to take me 5 minutes. I'm just going to clean his clock.
Sam's formidable, though. He's thought
not
about
formidable. I've watched him debate with Jordan Peterson. I'm like, come on, dude, are you serious? The reason you don't put your hand on the stove is because you don't put your hand on the stove. Because you don't. That's why you don't do it. It's like, oh, whatever, dude.
Andrew Wilson, we meet face to face. Although we had dinner last night.
You have a very intimidating presence. I remember when we were meeting up for dinner. I was like, this guy's gonna kill me.
I'm tall.
Yeah.
And I'm
just
young.
Just ruthless looking.
Tight skin, intense eyes. Yeah.
It's a very intimidating presence.
Oh yeah, dude. People ask me for directions all the time. I'm like the trustworthy. They're like, that guy's harmless.
Yeah, he's totally just the kindest guy ever.
My buddy said that. My buddy. I was talking about, I don't know, fighting or something. My buddy's a UFC heavyweight. And he goes, hey, you're not tough. He's like, in fact, if anything, you're on the other side of that equation. I was like, hey, man, it's my bone structure. I can't help it.
It's messed up.
Yeah.
It's messed up. Well, for the audience who's watching, you did a sexism last night at dinner.
Did. Oh, I did, didn't I?
You did a sexism.
Yeah.
Brian's wife, so for those of you who don't, Brian's wife called him out for a sexism. So waitress came over. And he was like, look, I really want to get a bottle of wine. My friend's here from out of town. I want to treat him to a nice dinner. All the things you're supposed to do. Yeah. And he had some questions about the wine. She's like, well, I haven't really tasted the wine. He's like, do you think get one of the guys?
That was a good impression of her, by the way.
Yeah, so do you think
hold on, that was a very that was a very sexist impersonation because you went,
yeah, it was, well, I mean, that's what they all sound like to me. But anyway, so Brian says, look, can you get one of the guys over here who have tasted the wine? So, and his wife's like, you said one of the guys. Like, why couldn't it be a girl? And ironically enough, it was a female manager who came over. It was a female
sommelier.
Yeah, it was a female manager.
And that was a good wine.
Over.
She done well, right?
I mean, it was a good wine, but I feel like that was in spite of her. I feel like it was just because you made the choice and she was going to reaffirm the choice no matter what.
Well, I did make the choice. Yeah, I saw it and I was like, that's the wine.
Yeah.
That's good. That's a good place.
It was a good place. Yeah, it was very good.
We touched on something. Last time we did a podcast, we left it on the idea that regardless of where you stand philosophically, you are going to live within parameters.
Yeah.
And no matter who you are, whether you're on the left, on the far left, on the right, on the far right, you establish parameters. And usually you argue over those parameters. You argue over the lines in which you are willing to fight for. That's kind of what happens, right? So if you're a typical academic liberal, you might argue, to borrow from Jonathan Haidt, that is it fair and does it do harm? And if it violates those two principles, then we have a huge problem. But you can violate all the other principles like sanctity and authority and loyalty. That's not really hurting anybody, right? And so
duty.
And these are the things that conservatives tend to hold closer. And there might be a personality trait. But you and I always talk, what I really appreciate about whenever you kind of argue is you're essentially arguing not just for parameters, but the parameters on which you argue have a Christian basis. Yeah. And not just that, they really are the parameters that the West has built everything that we all seem to flock to.
Right.
Around. And do you think that's a good argument to make?
I think it is. And the other thing is, so you bring up something which is interesting. It's the idea of universals. That's what you're really talking about.
That's the only thing I care about.
Yeah,
really.
It's like, what is like universal ethics here? When you talk about the harm principle, think about it. Think about why the left uses the harm principle is because they think of it as a universal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Well, nobody likes to be harmed. Nobody likes to suffer. Nobody likes this. Nobody likes. So they're actually trying to smuggle a universal in, aren't they?
Yes.
Yes. That's really what's going on. It's like, well, this is something we can universally apply to everybody, except you can't.
Right.
You still can't apply that universal because it's just not true, right? It's like, no, people like suffering.
They do.
For instance, they love lifting weights.
Yeah.
It's a lot of suffering there.
So is sacrifice, by the way.
So sure. Yeah. And duty.
Yeah.
Duty can be suffering.
And I'll suffer for a while now so that there's a payoff later, And that's
so the whole harm principle thing, it just kind of, I just reject it. But it's even funner to accept it. That's what makes it more fun. You
Yeah.
say, okay, you know what, you're right. Let's look at this you're right about this whole harm thing. You're right. Even if I use that metric, Christianity's still less harmful for society than any bullshit you come up with.
Yeah.
And then we just walk that all the way to the end too.
Yeah.
So no matter what, it's like it doesn't matter where we start or where we end, we're always going to come to the same place. My view is going to be correct, and your view is not going to be correct.
Well, how do you argue? How do you get yourself out of the fact that the founding fathers, who were essentially, if not Christians, deists,
Yeah.
and I know that most of what our, for example, justice system is predicated on is the Christian Judeo-Christian ethic, right? I mean, it really
English
is. It's
common law, yeah.
English common law, but that's informed by
Yeah.
the notion that we're all the same moral worth and those kinds of things, brothers and sisters under one God, one Father, and all that stuff, right? Is it that? But what would you do with the people? What would you do with the notion of individual liberty? So individual liberty is an important thing.
It is. But do you agree duty is too?
I think duty is inevitable. You can shirk your duty, but you're not going to be very happy.
But how come anytime I hear somebody talking about more rights, is it more rights, more me, more things for me? Like, I never hear any of these guys go, let's pass a constitutional amendment that's duty-based. That's like, all of us now have something that we should be doing.
Yeah.
There's never that. It's
Never.
always like,
Never.
can I have a constitutional right to get free shit? You know,
Well,
can I have a constitutional right to get thing, right? Get thing X.
Come on in. It's funny because I was talking to a couple of young men who were defining what a man is. My opinion as I get older is, this idea when you're young, it's a man is a warrior who can fight and do all this stuff. I mean, okay, that might be a role you play in a society if you have a certain constitution, physicality.
Sure.
There are merchants, there are teachers, there are fighters. I think what a man really is someone who puts himself last, who is in a position of service, example, competence, which comes with authority, and ultimately, essentially provides more than he takes. That's at least the ideal. I think that's what it feels like. Sort of be in a position where you can take care of people, provide them, you can provide for them, you can protect them, and you can guide them.
Well, if I ask you this question, what is masculine and what is feminine, as far as like virtues go? What's a
Very
masculine
good question.
versus a feminine virtue?
I would say, I know what it is to me.
What is it?
I have to say that a masculine virtue would be protector, provider.
But women
And women is nurture, which is part of provision, but to be a nurturer, a healer. Even healer is dicey because men are great healers.
Yeah, but let's look at this. Let's examine it though.
Yeah.
You want women to protect children, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
Protectors.
a virtue. So protectors,
Yeah.
right? I think that the virtues, there's no delineation. Okay, so all virtues are shared virtues. So how do we know if they're masculine or feminine? This is a big question because you're asking the pivotal question. What's a man? What's a woman? And the left has used ambiguity around this, around the sexual basis because they want to be troons and everything else.
Well, they borrowed from Derrida
Sure.
the notion that there's no duality.
Well, I look at it like this. So if I want to see what's a masculine versus a feminine virtue, I look at if this virtue fails en masse by this sex, does society completely just become unraveled and get destroyed, or does it not?
Huh.
And so then, if it does, I assign that virtue to that sex.
Or at least that role, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I would consider that to be part of the virtues, right?
Part of your duty.
Your duty
Yeah.
in society. So let's examine it this way. Women, let's say we have a full day where women just lose courage. That would suck. That would be really bad for society.
Yeah.
But if we had one day where men did, there is no society. And so if I'm going to break this down and say, so which one would we assign as a masculine versus feminine virtue? I think both men and women should be courageous.
Yeah.
But the reason this goes in the masculine category is because the failure of it completely destroys everything.
Does that then suggest that the delineation is that one sex is better at this than the other?
Oh, for sure.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah.
At least in a general sense.
Well,
but not always in a particular sense.
Yeah.
There are women who are more courageous than some men.
Of
There's
course,
no doubt.
Of course.
I'm not going to say that that's not true.
Of course.
But in general, that shit's not true.
Yeah.
Right? In general,
yeah.
that's not true.
Well,
Same thing with strength. It is true.
That's
There
right.
are some women
Sure.
who are stronger than
and
almost
I.
all men.
Yeah.
But that ain't the case in general, right?
Right.
Not even close. And so,
By the way, your wife is stronger than both of us because I listened to the numbers she was putting up. So.
well, I mean, she can lift. She can lift a lot.
Yeah, and I can't lift that much, and I
Yeah.
clocked that at dinner, and it kind of ruined my dinner.
Yeah.
Rachel, sorry.
Sounds
keep
like a
going.
problem for you.
It is a problem. For me.
But anyway, so I would just categorize it that way, right? It's not even that difficult when you think about it. It's actually really intuitive.
Yeah, but you said something. At the end of the day, also we have to talk about in a society your rights, your country has to be protected.
Yeah.
And whether you like it or not, there are stronger forces, usually men, who are better organized, better equipped,
And they're going to kill you.
and they're going to kill you.
Yeah,
or
they're gonna kill you.
they're going to enslave you and do whatever they want. They're going to use you as a tool or whatever. And if you
you
have
and that
any
pesky
doubts,
logic.
yeah.
pesky
If you have
logic.
any doubts about that, please pick up a history book because
Yeah.
that's the truth. So the fact of the matter is that a large question when you organize a society is who has a monopoly on violence.
That's right. Who's
Right?
got the monopoly on force?
Very important question. And if it is government, which it probably should be, you want a republic, okay, you have to have a strong federal government, strong state government, but stronger federal government, blah, blah, blah. That's why you have to have representative government. You just got to have your rulers.
Think so?
Well, your rulers have to be, and at least it's a refined democracy. The better way to say it is you've got to have checks and balances. You can't have a pure democracy. You can't have people. That the founding fathers knew that.
No,
It-
you
it's
can't. But I
crazy.
think democracy in general is a terrible idea.
You do.
Yeah. Let me show a different view.
What about a republic, though? This is a refined
Well,
democracy.
initially the republic was that there was no democracy,
Right.
essentially, almost
It
none.
was landowners who.
Well, not just that. Sometimes you had to swear an oath on a Bible in order to vote.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not a joke, Many states had that as a requirement. But let me take a different approach here. Forget government and government infrastructure. Government is just an extension of people, right? Really, that's all it is.
Right.
Let me ask you this question. In the Middle East right now, there's tons and tons of countries of low IQ, inbred Muslims, literally low IQ, due to the fact they've had 1,400 years of inbreeding. I mean, it's just objectively.
You and I are going to disagree on this because I lived there. It's not that they're low IQ. It's the cultures are old and clannish. So Somali culture is a classic example. My friend who grew up in Somalia, it's so funny when I hear people say they have low IQs. It's so funny. That's a very old culture. I promise you, the Somalis are like the Sicilians, very clannish. So when you're Somali, you're loyal to your clan first.
Sure.
Then Somalia.
You don't
then
think
Islam.
You don't
then
think
the United States.
You don't think that the massive amount of first cousin marriage over 1,400 years
Of
has
course,
collectively
of
lowered
course,
the IQ, though?
Of course, there was always that issue.
Yeah.
But, believe it or not, with a lot of tribes and stuff, they were aware of that. They figured that out. But people don't think they did. They did. There's this idea that they didn't. Human beings figure that stuff out. They go, wait a minute, when we're married, why does that kid have an underbite? So I think, but typically, in fact, that's why you would always have your daughter leave and go to another tribe.
Well, then, Pakistan's like 60% inbred, though.
There are when certain cultures come to another country, they get super insular and super clannish, and that is a major problem. It's the same thing with Ashkenazi Jews, especially when they're in those small enclaves.
Sure.
They would develop these prevalences of certain kinds of cancers and stuff. So I'm not going to say that that's not the case, but
Sure.
for the most part, the Somalis are, my friend was laughing, he goes, it's an old culture, just like the Sicilians. So please, if you think they're dumb, you'll be very poor at the outcome of that if you get into a situation where you underestimate, a group of Somalis who are.
Well, I don't think you underestimate the group. But
Yeah, I know, but anyway,
if I'm looking at a collective, I'm just looking at it
Yeah.
this way.
Yeah.
We're not going to disagree on this point.
Yeah.
The United States is so far more technologically advanced
100%.
than a country like Pakistan that it's like the Apollo dealing with the Starship Enterprise. Do you agree with that?
Yes, 100%.
So then how come the Starship Enterprise doesn't board the Apollo, take all their shit and leave? In other words, how come the United States, what's actually preventing us from just going in there, putting them all to the sword, taking all their shit, and leaving?
Part of it's just because we've probably seen how that works out historically. Alexander the Great was able to conquer the world because he never did that stuff. What he would do is it's an interesting question, because what he did was he would essentially say, hey, to the leaders, you can do whatever you want, keep your customs and everything else, you just got to swear allegiance to me.
Yeah.
Genghis Khan would usually do that too, because what he found was when he had these young men come in and kill and rape and everything else, what those young men did when they went back to their communities is did the same thing to their communities. And all of a sudden he said, you can't do that to them. And then the Khan came up with a major problem, which is, this is not a universal principle. I am being subjective here, and I'm just saying it's okay to kill those people. I know they look like us, but they're bad because they're over there. That doesn't hold. It doesn't hold. You'll be a snake eating its own tail. And one of the things that I think,
if you're trying to conquer,
yes, but my answer,
but not if you're just trying to kill and take the stuff.
That's true.
So the question is like, why don't we?
Well, because I think it degrades us internally. I think what happens is you cannot. That is not scaffolding or bedrock you can anchor into. It becomes immoral. It becomes something like. If the only principle you have, because what you're doing is exercising one principle, which is the man with the biggest club gets all the shit. Mm-hmm. And even with chimps, when you've got an alpha chimp, the females turn on that motherfucker and tear him to shreds, right? And ultimately, what I appreciate, and this is why I love how you argue, because what you're arguing for is not just universal principles, but they're universal principles because they are more true than the other principles. And what does that mean? They work better. They
well,
allow
it's not just
human
that they
beings
work
to be
better,
more themselves.
But the reason I bring this example up is because of this. I don't think it would be a problem for us to firebomb the shit out of Pakistan, blow them all to smithereens, have an invasionary force, conquer them within 6 weeks, leave with all their shit, leave our army, and who cares?
Right.
Bunch of decimated women, children, this and that. So they're actually banking in some ways on our benevolence. But what benevolence are we pointing to? We can't be pointing to like atheist benevolence. What atheist benevolence is there? From an atheist view, so I'm an atheist king of America, right? And I go, well, they got a lot of oil over there. I could use some oil over here.
You're right.
So what do you say?
You're getting into engineering now.
So what do you
right?
say we go over there and we just fucking kill them all? Yeah. We take all their low IQ shit. They don't need it anyway. It's fucking peasants.
Yeah.
And then we hoard it all and we bring it all back here for us.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me like the Muslims and the Jews and everybody on planet Earth is literally banking on the benevolence of Christians to not do this to them. So in many ways, they're almost reaffirming our own ethics, aren't they? They're almost reaffirming like, okay, well, you can't do this. And you say, why? Well, because you're Christians. It's so you're reaffirming my ethical view. Okay.
So let me stress test that, because Sam Harris, if he was sitting here, would say, it has nothing, you don't need Christianity, you need rationality. And he uses the word rationality and rational about 1,000 times.
Yeah, what does that mean?
And I've really given him a lot of time, and I like Sam Harris for a lot of reasons. But the one thing I've never been able to jive with, he's not even an atheist really. He's more of a, he gets into Buddhism in a very deep way, so it's a different thing. But I would say that could you make the argument? Sam Harris would probably say, you don't need Christianity. You need rationality, because ultimately what you would find is that it is not rational to do that, because ultimately it would bankrupt you or it would just not work. Now, the Romans would disagree. The Romans did it forever and did very well.
Yeah.
So my
same
thing
with
is,
slavery. What are you talking about?
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So if you're talking rationality, then you're talking math, and then you're talking engineering.
And Sam Harris would also say Christianity is irrational, but then at the same time you make the claim, well, that's preventing me from doing all the shit you're considering irrational, though.
Listen, I'm right with you.
And then he goes, wait a second, that's true. That's the problem, right? It's like,
have you debated him yet?
No, they're setting it up apparently.
Oh, good.
I don't know how anybody could ever believe any of the shit he believes. It's going to take me 5 minutes. I'm just going to clean his clock.
Sam's formidable though. He's
It's
thought
not
about
formidable. I've watched him debate with Jordan Peterson. I'm like, come on, dude, are you serious? The reason you don't put your hand on the stove is because you don't put your hand on the stove. Because you don't. That's why you don't do it. It's like, oh, whatever, dude. But anyway. The whole rationality argument is retarded on its face. First of all, what does that mean? What does rationality mean?
Well, rationality
It
would
means
probably
some
mean-
shit that I made up.
It might be something you can measure, right? So rationality would be this.
How?
I think they would argue this way. You would say there is something you can measure mathematically, meaning we have more stuff for us, or there's more to eat. There's more shelter. This is kind of how they talk, right?
More for me to eat, more
I'm right
shelter,
with you.
more oil.
I'm right
more,
with you.
Ooh, it almost sounds like I should deploy my massively advanced army, kill all you fucking idiots who I don't like anyway,
Yeah.
take all your shit,
Yep.
take it back here, and sit on the bed with my
And-
concubines.
and
What's
keep,
the
and
problem?
keep going.
Yeah.
Let's expose all the profoundly retarded or people who are handicapped because they're a drag on resources.
Bullet
And
to the head.
And
Just-
we can give that money.
Yeah.
Give that money to the, and then while we're at it, people who've come from broken homes are probably going to end up in, you can just keep going, right?
Yeah.
And that's my thing. And that's my
So they
argument.
bank on our benevolence.
Yes.
That's interesting. And what is the benevolence they're banking? They're banking on the irrational Christians who believe in the sky fairy to continue to believe in their disappearing sky fairy doesn't really exist. The magic man of the sky, who we appeal to for our rationality. And then that's what prevents us from doing all of the things they consider irrational,
Yeah.
even though they can't make a case for how it's actually irrational. For instance, if it was legal for me to just, I don't know, kill Sam Harris, why shouldn't I just reach over, bash his fucking head in with a hammer, take all of his shit, and walk out the room?
Well,
why not?
The rational argument for that would be probably something like, when you have a society like that, you end up with Somalia, which isn't a country, Afghanistan, or these countries that end up producing nothing. There's no innovation.
So?
You get Russia, for
So
example.
why do I
No,
care,
I'm just
though?
saying. I'm saying that would probably be.
Yeah, but you see how irrational that is? Why do I give a fuck if you don't get that country
Well,
and
you-
you don't get that country?
you would-
Why shouldn't I just care that I get?
Well, you would
I'm the
care. You would
warlord.
care because I would say to you, Andrew, you can't ultimately live in a society like that because that somebody will bash you over the head. You're next, right? Because somebody's stronger. So you can make
And then you tell the guy, but if you're over here with me,
well, now
you
have,
get the bed of concubines, and that's the guy who gets his head bashed
And so what do
in.
you get? You get warlords and gangs.
Sure.
And you get Haiti.
And the problem, if you're the warlord,
Yeah.
what's the problem?
There's no problem.
Right.
There's
And
no
that's
problem.
that's the reduction that is annoying to me because again, what are you banking on? You're banking on the fact that random strangers in society, I want them to do well. Random strangers in society,
is
I
my
want them to do
problem.
good. I want you to have a great family. I want you to have a nice life. I
This
want
is
you
my
to
problem with communism. Communism is you pledge fealty to equality.
Yeah.
And so what you have to have with equality is a strong monopoly of violence for your top-down government, your Politburo, to bash or confiscate from the people that actually produce, take risk, and use their ingenuity to get ahead. You've got to keep everybody equal, which means you've got to keep everybody poor. And again, the only ideal you're going for here is some kind of an engineering thing you have to do on a board where you got to keep everything equal. And good luck with that.
You can't set
those
market
are real human
prices,
beings
can't
who are
do-
involved
yeah.
that, yeah.
Well,
So, yeah.
let's look at this. This is an argument I call force doctrine. Let me run this by you. It's my position that all rights come from men to women, meaning that women cannot secure their own rights, but instead have to always appeal to men for rights. And this is because they have to always make that appeal to men, there's always going to be a patriarchy because essentially women have to appeal to the patriarchy to destroy the patriarchy, which requires enforcement from the patriarchy.
Well, I mean-
So it's circular.
Yeah.
I consider it a circular argument,
Yeah.
right? So here's the way I see it. Let's say tomorrow in the United States, all the men wake up and they're like, you bitches are all slaves now, and you're all going in my concubine cage, and that's that. What can women actually do about that?
They'd have to get other men.
So women couldn't do anything. But here's what's interesting. Now let's reverse this, right? Women wake up tomorrow, and they say, oh, you fucking men, you're going in the concubine cages, right? We would go,
Yeah.
that's cute.
Yeah.
And then walk that way, right? They could not collectively force us to do shit.
No.
Now then it gets more interesting. If the conditionals that men don't like, though, from other men who rule them, right? If that gets too draconian, men have recourse. They can do something about
They
that.
can organize.
They can do something about that because they can use a monopoly on force,
Yes.
right? Again, women can't do that. So we would comb through the historic record to find one case of this. Never happened once.
Never.
Women have never, ever one time collectivized and used force to overthrow the chains of oppressors. They only appeal to men to do it for them, right? That's why equality is a lie. That's why equity is a lie. That's why men get the big piece of fucking chicken. That's why you need to be grateful as a woman and show some gratitude, because half the world does stuff your fucking asses in a cage because they can. There's no recourse.
Right.
Right? And what's happened here in the United States with these femoids and these feminist scum, right, is they have gone out of their way to pretend that that reality isn't reality. And so the thing is like, how about there's a little bit of respect for the fact that men must hold a position of great benevolence, especially if they're Christians, because they don't do that to you. And when you're in charge of the infirm, it's $600,000 a year that you kill.
Well, let me give you another perspective on that, though, because we have to be careful as well not to measure strength like we don't measure bravery or intelligence with one metric. We have to be careful about measuring strength. So it's true, men, the United States, let's take an example, home to the roaring stock market, to the NFL,
Sure.
to the Navy SEALs, to Delta Force, to the biggest guns, to the F-35, all male inventions. And that is one, for that matter, your favorite Marvel characters with their, with the Roman chest and everything else. And that is a metric for strength, right? But we were talking about this the other day. There's another kind of strength. There's another kind of strength which could be something like you can still have strength and courage as a woman, and you can put men to shame with your courage if you're willing to sacrifice, for example, your own body, right? You're raising 3 kids as a single mom because some shithead left you, and you make it work somehow.
But that's duty.
It's duty.
Sure.
So we do hold that kind of strength in high regard as well.
Sure.
Like we do with different kinds of intelligence.
I completely
right?
agree with
Yeah.
all of this.
So what do we do with that?
I'm not telling you to reject the virtues.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you anything like this. What I'm doing is giving you a descriptive reality. The descriptive,
I agree with that.
Yeah, the descriptive reality is like, this is what's actually real.
Yes.
And
it comes down to physics, doesn't it?
It does. It just comes down to the fact that, look, I think it's even worse than that. I think that the women could all be armed and try to enslave the men, and it still wouldn't do them any good. So the thing is, it's just like, that's how lopsided it is. I just watched a group of midgets take on these wildly in shape women and just toss them around like they were nothing.
I saw that.
Like they were nothing. I've watched, these 14-year-old soccer players beat these women's leagues like they're nothing, these professional sports teams.
Yeah.
They don't really understand the differential in strength between men and women on average. Whether individually you can be stronger than some men has no bearing on anything.
Well, I would argue that the closer you come to objective reality, when you try to start your own business, build your own brand, when you do a sport on a high level, you tend to be a lot less idealistic. You tend to, you tend to go, oh yeah. Talk to women athletes, great athletes like Serena Williams, about how they do against the number 1,000 male tennis players.
Oh yeah, a lot of them actually are more rooted in reality.
Yes,
and a lot of those people end
'Cause
up
they put
being my
themselves in the
fans. I
arena.
get DMs from professional female
really?
athletes, all the time, and they're like, "Yeah, duh." Like it's not even in the same universe.
Yeah.
One of them was telling me, he's like, just an average guy wouldn't want to tangle with an average man.
No.
She's like, my husband's not a bodybuilder, and he's still strong as shit in
Fuck
comparison to me.
Well-
and I'm like, well, that makes sense. But the thing is like, my whole point is to talk about the idea of virtues, right? How is it not virtuous that we show that kind of restraint? That men who can, since you're in a vulnerable position, do this to you, but don't.
Yeah.
But get no credit for the virtue that they don't.
Well, I think we do. I think that one of the things we hold in
From
high
who?
regard. Well,
From
we just take it for granted. In other words, when you're a heavyweight UFC fighter, but even the idea like we would never, almost universally, there seems to be a human ideal, at least within their own societies, that you don't just trample the innocent and the defenseless.
In
right?
the West, maybe.
Yeah, you want to protect the defenseless and the innocent.
Sounds
right?
a lot like appealing to that pesky Christianity again.
Well, it does, but we had that peculiar institution where we contended with it. We contended with our own inequality. We started contending with that the minute the founding fathers. I mean, George Washington wrote a whole bunch about the evils of slavery. I mean, it wasn't until the cotton gin came along and cotton became something that was really profitable. But for the most part, it does seem like.
Well, industrialization was always going to eliminate slavery because slavery's it's not profitable in comparison to the replacement with machinery.
So hold that thought. What do you think of with AI and with this advancement of technology as it sort of almost erases the relevance of male and female strength inequalities, the inherent differences in our bone structure and our.
How does it do that?
Well, whether it's weaponry or whatever it might be, as things look, we're fighting with drones now. So
Sure.
now it's about this, right? So more and more we're seem to be your physical
Until you
attributes.
load that first 100-pound missile on the drone.
Yeah, well, you need
and then
some guys.
and then you transport it, 500 miles down the road in this massive diesel truck that's a manual steering, nightmare
Sure.
through all sorts of horrific
But we
terrain.
may have,
and then we have to mine all the shit for the bombs out of the most desolate wasteland fucking conditions possible.
Yeah.
While, so
Well, do you
it
ever
all
worry-
seems like it's still going to reduce the strength.
Maybe. Do you worry about AI sort of as sort of almost a satanic force? Is there ever a thought that we are rendering humanity irrelevant?
Well, I mean, how long have we been hearing this shit, right? It's like
A long time.
Y2K,
That's
that was
right.
it. This going to happen
Acid
next.
rain.
This going to happen next. The fucking hole in the ozone's going to kill everyone. It's always one panic after another. You know what I've seen? Here's what I've seen from AI so far, right? All the fucking doom and gloom, right? I've seen memes that aren't good. That's about what I've seen. Or people used to undress women that they want to see naked.
Yeah.
That's about as far as I've seen. 90% of the users are like, I want to see what her tits look like. Hey, Grok,
right.
can you show me this chick's tits and draw her out?
Right.
Grok's like, yeah, sure, I don't care. Because it doesn't, it's a speech program.
Yeah.
Right?
Would you
First of all, there is no AI. Artificial intelligence doesn't exist.
Not yet, no.
What we're
It's
using,
large language
yeah,
models.
we're just using, language models. That's it. And so the language
Yeah.
model itself, right? People they get so uppity about, and you know why it is? It's because we can't utilize language. Like if you talk to ChatGPT about this, you're like, why is it that people actually humanize you? You don't exist for all intents and purposes. It's like, yeah, I don't. But the reason is because when we use language, we automatically assume a you. So that's why we say things like Siri's talking right now. Siri's not talking because there's no fucking Siri.
Right.
It's just some made up shit,
Yeah.
right? It's just some like referent that we have to
Yeah.
this thing speaking, but
It's
thing's not
algorithm.
even speaking,
Right.
right? It's like
Right.
none of that's
Really
happening.
interesting.
But we immediately assign it that way because that's the only way our brains can function.
So, I always think about this I have all the facts I want on my phone. I have all the knowledge I want on my phone. They're right there. the facts. It doesn't get me really that much closer to the truth. There are endless numbers of facts. And what do you think of the idea? Do you think the more something is true, the more it's good? Do you equate truth
Generally,
with
yeah.
good? Yeah.
Generally speaking,
Yeah.
yes. I think there's a universal intuition like this. This is why you see the outrage about the Epstein files.
Yeah.
Right? People are like, look, if we know more about the truth, they seem to universally think it's good, right? This reminds me of a movie, though, actually. This conundrum comes up. You ever seen the movie 8mm with Nicolas Cage?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
There's a great scene in that movie where Cage says, look, to the mom of this missing girl. She's been missing for like 10 years or something, and he says, look, if you could abandon the view that your daughter's out there somewhere having the best life ever, right? But you'll never know. Or you do know, and it turns out she was murdered and raped in the most horrible fashion. Which one would you choose? And she says, well, I choose to know. It's like, even then,
You choose to know.
I choose to know. Even though that's going to hurt 10 times worse, right? But I'm going to choose.
At least I know.
At least I know. And that's what she said.
'Cause
She
know
said,
where
I
to
got to
place-
know.
I know where to place it.
Yeah, I know. I got to know. No matter what, I got to know. So the thing is like, would you rather live in blissful ignorance or have the horrible knowledge of the truth
We
that
all
Soylent
wanna know.
Green is people? We all want to know.
We all want to know. Every
So there
one
must
of
be
us-
some sort of ideal here, which makes us move and gravitate towards what is true. What you brought up a king's ransom analogy. Would a king pay a ransom if you went back in time and you said, I want half your kingdom and half your gold. I'm going to give you this gadget, and you can look up any fact on planet Earth right now. He would be like, yep, here you go. Here's all of it. And then he'd be fucked because he'd have all those facts, but he would realize something really important that you realized. You have to interpret facts.
You just do. Yeah.
You should have
just
paid
do.
your whole ransom full of gold to getting the best people on planet Earth to come in and interpret
Yeah.
these things,
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly right.
And that's the big problem that we have. So we got all this knowledge, but who cares? You don't know how to interpret it.
It is that sort of notion of the tree of knowledge, you know, like be careful what you ask for, you know. It's like I don't know that makes you any freer, and I don't think it makes you, I don't think it gets you any closer to the truth.
Well, that's why so many people use the internet. Like, remember that old meme? They're like, we have all the knowledge, collective knowledge of the earth on our phone, and we used to look at fucking kittens, right? Which is true. Yeah. But why? Well, because there's no interpretation there. It's just designed to, like, some sort of, like, emotional gratification.
Yeah.
Oh, look, the little kitty's playing with the stupid little toy. It's like, that's it. Well, let me look at another one.
Yeah.
I'll look at another one. There's no interpretation really there. It's just like a universalized emotional kick.
Right.
So they do real well. The second you start getting into facts and data, and you start getting into what's true, what's false, epistemology, ontology, cosmology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, now we get into the interpreter part, right? And it's once we get to interpreting it that people have such a hard time. That's why the phone does you very little good.
Well, how did you arrive at this conclusion? You have an engineering brain. You have a very logical brain, and you're very good at sort of like reverse. I think you use the word deductive reasoning, but inductive reasoning, right? So you kind of go, let's work backwards, you know.
Yeah. Well, that's inductive reasoning is what all of us in this room use every day. So, and you just take it for granted because you learned it when you were a tiny kid.
Yeah.
It's how you interact with the world. It just works like this. Where did I leave my car keys last night? I left them up on the shelf. Therefore, the first thing I should do is check on that shelf, and I should find my car keys, right?
Right.
That's all just inductive reasoning.
Right.
Right? It seems like that would be the case, seems like that would be the case, seems
Why
like
wasn't
that
that
would be
enough
the
for
case.
you? Why Christianity?
Well, because when we utilize the reduction, we have some serious problems. We grant ourselves access to a lot of things that we shouldn't be granting ourselves access to, which are called transcendentals.
Yes. See, this is where I wanted to get to.
Okay.
So hit me with this, because there are certain abstract truths we'll never see, but we know are truth.
Yeah, I'm not an expert. I usually start on the other end of the spectrum instead of in the beginning. So I'm not an expert on presuppositional apologetics at all. And I'm sure somebody else, here's my disclaimer, right? I'm sure that there's a presupper out there who's going to be like, Andrew, damn it, you could have done this better.
Yeah.
But I'll try to give you the outline. The outline just works like this. There's transcendental categories which are true, but if you're a strict materialist, should not be true. And therefore you can't account for them or account for the use of them. Example, if you're a strict materialist, then logic itself is either a social construct or it's a material thing. It has to be one or the other. And so if you ask a materialist, okay, if logic is just a social construction, why can't I change it?
You can't.
And they don't know,
Yeah.
but yet grant themselves access to it.
Mm-hmm.
They say, well, it's true, I can't change it, and yes, it just exists, right? But I'm still going to use it as a materialist, even though it's immaterial.
Really dumb people do this shit all the time.
Now, this
scientifically.
Now, this to me is wild. It's the same thing as all sorts of other transcendental categories which exist too. You could say mathematics would be one that's discovered instead of socially constructed, right? This is a universal which is discovered. It must be because it's a constant. It's always true. 1 + 1 is always going to equal 2, even if you assign the values differently. So if you say 3 + 3 = 2, you're just actually saying the value is 1 and the value is 1. There's no way to get around it, right? So these are not constructed truths or discovered truths. Well, that shouldn't be possible from a materialist perspective.
Right. Meaning they've always existed,
Or
before you were here.
Even if
before
they
any of
never
this.
always existed, let's say they didn't.
Yeah.
They shouldn't exist at all because they're not material. Everything from a materialist view is supposed to be accounted for with stuff, right?
Yes.
There's stuff.
Yeah.
So what fucking stuff is that?
Yeah.
We don't know. But it doesn't matter if we don't know. We'll discover it one day using the power of science. And it's like,
Although
shut up.
there are theorems that people dream up, write in a book, put in a shelf, and 100 years later, that theorem is used to put a rover on Mars. That theorem is used, that mathematical sort of equation is necessary to do something physical in the world, which is something I kind of find fascinating.
Yeah, well, they have to discover these things, these universals, and once they're discovered, it's funny how they coexist with all of the laws of the land.
Yeah.
It's really weird. It almost seems like it's designed, but what
Right?
the hell do I know? What do I know?
This is how I feel too.
And so the thing is, when you look at the view, you start to realize that kind of atheists and agnostics grant themselves access to all kinds of shit they shouldn't grant themselves access to. For instance, they suppose that there's a truth. Otherwise, why are they talking to you?
Exactly.
Why the fuck are you even talking to me?
This is what I always say. What, if you don't think that there is a truth,
Yeah.
if you don't think there is a universal truth,
Yeah.
a universal
Then why are you
principle,
talking to me?
then why bother? Why you must have a mind that can conceive of that for you to debunk that, you know?
Well, no, it's worse.
Yeah.
In a way, it's worse because they're presupposing that, right? The
Yeah.
presupposition is that there must be truth
Yeah.
because I'm engaging in a debate about what's true.
Yes.
Otherwise, why are you engaging in the debate?
Exactly.
You just like making fucking mouth noises at me, or what's the...
This is what happens to a lot of philosophers. You know, that's what happened. Tolstoy, if you dedicate yourself to the notion of self-perfection, you better be careful because that will be your God. If your God is to be the most successful writer in the world, where you're mentioned in the same breath as Freud, if you want to be physically robust, if you want to be beautiful, if you want to be rich, if you want all the status, if you want to be a household name in every country you go to, it's going to be a good time, man. You'll satisfy all your sensations, all of them. Problem is what happened to Tolstoy or anyone who gets anything they want to the nth degree. They get to the top of that mountain and something very strange happens. They go, wow, there's nothing else to climb. And Tolstoy at 50, when he was at the pinnacle of his life and was considered the greatest writer of all time, didn't want to go into the back barn because he had a rope he was going to use to tie something up. And he goes, I'm going to hang myself if I go back there. And then he told his friend he wouldn't go hunting because he was like, I think I'm going to put that gun in my mouth. Because
Alexander wept because there's no more worlds to conquer.
Exactly, man.
To borrow a line from Die Hard.
There you go. There you go. Thank you for bringing in Die Hard.
Well,
and then he
yeah,
saw
of
that
course.
the peasantry had an abscessed tooth, a broken bone. They were kind of joyous, and they would go to church, and they didn't even understand the sermon. But it was this sort of it was being spoken in Latin. They didn't speak Latin.
Yeah.
But they had a community, and they were there. And so he just said, if I don't at least behave as though God exists, if I don't just at least assume the position, even if I don't believe in it, even if I can't wrap my head around the rational idea that Christ was risen and all that stuff, if I don't do that, I'm going to end it. I need something bigger than myself.
And this is why I think it's actually better. I don't usually start at the beginning. That's presuppositional apologetics, not a thing I do. While I understand it well, I don't usually start there. I like to start at the end. Now it's like, sure, I just grant everything that you say as being true. That all life is a series of moral and ethical preferences, and we share and combine those preferences in order to create the societies that we like collectively. So all I really got to do is collectively convince everybody that your wife is now my wife. We're going to bash your fucking brains in. I'm going to throw you in the fucking gutter, and we're going to rule by my ethical purview.
gotta be a better-
and there's not a fucking thing you can object to.
I just got to engage in sophistry and be...
Yeah, because that's your view. Your view is there are no moral facts. Your view is that there are no moral truths. Your view is that these things, there's no stance-independent reason for any of this. It's all just fucking mouth sounds
Isn't that Alex's...
and material experiences
Isn't that
happening.
Alex's... what's his name? Alex...
O'Connor?
Yeah, isn't that his position to an extent?
He's
Yeah.
a fucking dipshit too.
I'm
That's
just
the
like-
problem, right? It's like, why not just follow it through to the end, Alex?
Yeah.
Because when they don't want to do that, they never want to do that. They always want to go, "But God's not real, though, is he?" And you
Well,
just
no,
go,
what they do
"Who
is
cares
they-
if he is?"
they-
At the end of your logic, Mark, people are going to be like, "Oh, you're right. Nothing matters. Now fucking kill him. Take his shit. Put it in your vault. Take his wife. Right? Bang her 1,000 times and kick your feet up."
Yeah.
There's no consequences for nothing.
Right.
There's no universal anything. There's nothing outside of preference. It's like, if that's how you view things, let's just go to the end.
That's right.
Let's not wait.
That's exactly
Right? We don't need to. It's settled. We'll just settle it now. You're right. It's all done. Now let's just take it
And
to
if
the
you
end.
don't do it, somebody else is.
That's right.
You're creating
We're just
that
gonna
world.
take it all the way to the end, and all the fucking Chad's gonna come in, nerd, and beat you to death, and take your fucking girlfriend, and all you're gonna be able to say is, "But that's against my preferences," and they're gonna go, "But it's not against mine, fucker."
I'm right with you. I'm right with you.
And
on
that's the problem. Alex.
Yeah.
Fucking moron.
Yeah. I just don't know what.
These fucking rednecks. These rednecks out in the hills with no teeth, man, who drink moonshine are smarter than these fucking people.
Yeah.
They're literally drinking moonshine out there. They're like, what the fuck is this moron talking about? And they're not lying. They're not kidding. They work it through to the end. And these guys just veil it all in philosophical sophistry and fucking nonsense.
Yeah, but when you talk to a soldier who's been at war, they're not going to talk that way usually.
No.
I mean, unless they're really cynical. But for the most part, you're right. When you're trying to organize a society, that's a terrible idea.
That's fucking stupid.
Well, first of all, it's impossible.
It's literally retarded.
Yeah, it's you would find very quickly
All
that
these
you'd be in that
dumbasses
situation.
organized. It was so funny. Who was that idiot who the one who talks like this? He always talks like this, and he's very precise with his language. You see, it's what's
How
the
old
fucking
is he?
idiot's
Is he a
name?
young guy?
No, he's an old guy. He was bitching about.
Daryl Dawkins.
Yeah, Dawkins. Yeah, he's bitching about Christmas. It was the funniest shit
Richard
in the world.
Dawkins. Richard
Yeah, it's
Dawkins.
the funniest shit. He's like,
he's fucking. He drives me nuts.
I rather preferred back when we had Christmas carols, and the carolers would come to the door and they would sing, and I rather liked that. I rather thought that it was rather nice.
and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, you fucking destroyed it, you retard.
Yeah.
Like you spent your whole life saying that was a bunch of sky fairy nonsense bullshit. Yeah. Evolution was the way. Fucking immigration, great. More liberal policies.
Yeah.
Enough of the fucking his fucking lament. Really? 30 fucking years of this? He's finally rich?
He's like, I rather miss my Christmas carols. I rather miss my Christmas Eve.
You know, and so you want to reach through the screen and just bash his face. You're like, you fucking idiot.
But my issue.
How the fuck did you do that?
Well, the way they argue, though, to me, and I've really tried to give them. I've really spent time listening to the argument. So maybe I'm wrong, but for the most part, what I find is that the way. So you know how like Kamala Harris will. I listened to 2 hours of her. I need that time back because I was waiting for her to say something of substance. And all she essentially will say to you is there are people that need help, and Republicans are anti-help and just want all the money, and they don't care about people.
She says that between making collard greens in her tub, right?
She's never looked at.
Well, that's what she said she did. She made tub greens.
Tub greens?
Tub greens.
I don't know.
You don't remember tub greens?
I don't remember tub greens. But she won't.
Oh, she made the best tub greens. Boy.
It's a lot of
the
greens.
best tub
But
greens
that's a
you
lot
ever
of
did
that's
eat.
a lot of collard
It's
greens.
a lot of
Because that's a big tub.
Bro, if you don't make it in the tub,
Okay,
are you even eating collard greens?
I don't know, man. I'm not a collard green person, but you sound like you're from the South now, and you understand.
Uh-huh.
But she just clearly had never thought that maybe there's a more nuanced, layered argument on the conservative side. And so what they do is they tend to just attack the person, and they do these ad hominem attacks. With what it sounds like with Harris and Alex, what they'll do is they'll take a very literal interpretation of the Bible, right? And they'll point out all the inconsistencies. And there's a different way to read the Bible. There's a different way to look at Christianity. You don't have to be. Yes, you can find contradictions in everything, but that's not the point. We're not here to kind of like break that down. I think we're here to.
It's better than that.
Yeah.
You just pretend for a second that you're breaking down. You play devil's advocate.
Okay.
We're breaking down the inconsistencies with the Bible.
Yes.
Okay. Is the Bible inconsistent?
Yeah.
So.
What do you mean?
So should it not be inconsistent?
I mean, probably it'd be nice.
Do you believe in should claims?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what the fuck are we talking?
Yeah.
It's always the same shit.
It doesn't
Your-
erase the whole Bible.
Your religion's inconsistent.
Yeah.
Should it not be inconsistent? It should not be inconsistent. Why? I thought you didn't believe in should claims.
Yeah. So what you're asking me to do is then I got to erase the concept of forgiveness, loving your enemy, turning the other cheek, doing unto others as you'd have them do unto you, all those things.
Yeah,
we're all of the same moral
But let's
worth.
just pretend they're right, right? Why do you ever have to defend a position against a person who doesn't believe in truth?
Yeah.
Who cares? Bible's not true. So nothing's fucking true.
Yeah.
So shut up.
Yeah.
Do you believe in things as being true? Do you believe that there are things which are true?
You would have to.
They say yes. And great, me too.
Yeah. But they're arguing for their own version of truth. So that's what I'm saying to your point.
They don't have a version.
Why would they be having this conversation? Why even engage in these debates if you're not trying to win something, if you're not trying to change someone's point of view that is more sympathetic to your own?
Yeah, but this is the problem. like the inconsistency right from the beginning starts at the beginning. They don't believe in the concept of truth. There is no such thing as objective truth.
Right.
Why do I give a shit if something then isn't true? What you're saying to me isn't true. When you're saying to me this is inconsistent and I ask you if that's true, you have to say it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, is that true? Yes, but you don't believe in objective truth. Right. What?
It's so true. It's illogical.
They're
right?
fucking retarded.
Yeah.
Again, like, look, it's way worse. It's way worse. Okay? Here's what happened. I'm going to tell you exactly how this happened. The 4 retards of the atheist of the apocalypse or whatever, the reason that they got so popular is because modern day Christians are fucking pussies. And what they should have done is sat down and been like, oh, you're so full of shit, you fucking retard, and here's why. Instead, they were way too nice and allowed themselves to be badgered into shit that didn't matter.
Yeah.
Into stuff that didn't matter. Instead of just sitting there and humiliating these retards over and over and over. And making truth statements, don't believe in truth, pure materialists, granting themselves immaterial concepts as though they're true, even though we still don't believe in truth. We have access to knowledge.
Hitchens, it was Dawkins, Hitchens, Sam Harris, and...
so that's why, what do they always debate? They don't ever debate their actual views. They want to debate some stupid shit.
Is the evidence for God enough to prove that God is...
And it's like, well, what standard are we using for evidence here?
Well, just whatever will convince me.
And it's like, oh, okay. Well, can you convince me that your worldview is true? No, because there's no such thing as truth. So who cares?
Well,
It's
that's
like-
what Jordan and Sam got hung up on in their first debate, which the idea of like true, something could be true in terms of it's true that you could come up with a nuclear weapon. There's technology to blow up the entire world, I suppose, but that doesn't mean it's a truth that we want. When you bring truth is synonymous with good, right? And you can say that there are certain facts on the ground that would allow you to create a doomsday bomb, but that doesn't mean it's true. That just means it's factual. I think they got caught up on that sort of the semantics of that argument. Did you remember that? Did you? Yeah. Which I thought was very interesting. And
Who cares? We live in a simulation anyway.
They couldn't get out of the gates.
That's what I would do. I'd just be like, we live in a simulation.
And you just exit the
Yeah.
argument. Yeah.
Is that true? You can't say it's not.
Yeah.
You can't say it is
Yeah.
because it doesn't even exist. Who cares? You're just a brain in a vat. Who cares?
Yeah.
Go out there, kill yourself, brain in a vat. You just
Yeah.
wake up in a vat. Like these things cycle into absurdity, and they always have. And that's why they hate actually having debates with people who think the position through. But here's the thing: it's key. I'm not even a philosophical debater. I do politics.
Yeah.
But if you apply the same principles to politics, it's the same exact shit.
Give me an example.
Oh, well, for instance, these progressives, they'll say things to you like, look, everything is a social construct. Let's just take sex and gender, for instance, right? Gender is a social construct. You go, oh, okay. Well, what's the material reality? Sex. Sex is the material reality. Okay, that's fair. So we can just make up whatever gender we want. Yeah, that's, essentially. I'm like, okay, so if I don't believe your social construct, right, and I think there's only 2 because that's how many constructs I see, and you see 300, you can't actually say I'm wrong, right? Well, no, you're not actually wrong because we just made the shit up. That's what a social construct is, right? We just made it up.
Exactly.
And I go, okay, well then why is it that I should pretend? And they'll say this. They'll say, well, you should pretend because
of my
don't
feelings.
pretend that their belief is true. They might kill themselves. Yeah, well, that's interesting. Do you think that my belief in God is untrue? Yes. Well, you should pretend that it is true or else I'm going to go kill myself. And you know what they
So now we
say?
just have
The
a-
harm of you having that belief is so much worse on society that we have to correct it. And I go, oh, interesting, because
Now-
I think the same fucking thing about your belief.
Yeah. Now who's more right? Since
Yeah.
it's all a construct.
Yeah, so the whole idea.
You know what it comes down to then?
Yeah.
It'll come down to who can enforce their
Right.
their idea of truth.
And what they'll say is all of what is reality comes down to the idea of force. Ultimately, if you reduce their position enough, to which I say, well, then that's a great reason why Christians should have the monopoly on it, isn't it?
That's right, because at least somebody is watching them.
Well, it's not just that, but from their own view. Their view, it's
Mercy.
always reduces to force.
Love,
and if that's the
mercy.
case, then Christians need to learn your opposition enemy, They want the monopoly on force, so you can't fucking give it to them, or what do you think they're going to do with it?
They're going to kill you.
They're going to fucking kill you.
Yeah.
Or they're going to do something to enforce things which will destroy your way of life or destroy everything about you. So that's the thing. It's like anytime, and I've had them, I've literally reduced their arguments to this a million times, especially on the tea issue, right? You should do this because if you don't affirm this false belief, right, then they're going to hurt themselves. And it's like, but you wouldn't do that for me. Yeah, because I think the harm is so much worse. It's like, well, what's the metric for that? Well, I made it the fuck up.
Yeah.
Same thing with but the other direction.
There's zero bedrock to anchor into.
You don't have to affirm my belief, but I have to affirm yours.
You're literally giving me nothing to build anything off of or stand on.
Well, then you know what they say, the science. But what about the the new science built by sociological progressives, like they're progressives that's all sociology is. It's just a bunch of fat women who are progressives who sit around and come up with the biggest loads of fucking nonsense you've ever heard.
That's right.
That's why none of it can be replicated. It's something like 60-70% of all sociological studies can't be replicated, even when they bring in the same scientists, same conditions, same everything.
Is that
they can't
true?
Yeah.
I love that.
It's called the replication crisis.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, no shit. It's called the replication crisis. It's sociology at the forefront. All science suffers from the replication crisis, but it's really funny when you have applied science, it suffers way less. Why? Well, because experimental conditions in the material, they're really easy to duplicate, right? Thing go boom, thing don't go boom. Pretty simple to look at, right?
So
machine work, machine don't work. Yeah. Thing work, thing don't work. Thing fall, thing go up, thing go down, thing go this, thing go that.
Which is, by the way,
pretty simple.
A reality all of us depend on every single day. Whether you know it or not, that Starbucks in your hand, the fact that we can control the weather here, the structure that we enjoy, knowing that ceiling won't fall on it, it's all based on exactly what you just said.
Yeah, but sociology, totally opposite. Right? They'll take a sample size of 200 rednecks and they'll look at them going through a red light. And then they'll like shift subtly the red light, let's say, right, where it hits a yellow light. And then condition people over like 3 weeks that it's going to hit the yellow light to see if they slow down. They'll say, aha, we've got human psychology figured out.
Yeah.
If we condition people based on this, they'll actually slow down, blah, 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 right? And then they'll put it out in the ethos as though it's true. People start regurgitating it as though it's true.
Yeah.
And then they try to reproduce it. But they do it somewhere else. They do it in like western Idaho, let's say. Something like, instead of, some big redneck place, they do it in some like nice big suburban place. And then they get totally fucking different results. Right? And they're like, wait a second. Actually, perhaps human psychology is much more complex than we at first thought. And trying to put in environmental studies like this and then putting them out as though they're true may not have been the best fucking idea.
That's right.
Or they'll go back, get the same damn control group, same light, same town, same thing, and now nobody slows down. They have no fucking idea why. They retest it, right? And that's the thing. That's my whole problem. It's all voodoo. That's all voodoo shit.
Voodoo.
And that's what women argue from all the time.
Oh, my studies, my sociological study.
Did you even read the fucking study?
Well, I read the conclusion.
Yeah.
I read, and it affirms. They play them like they're fucking Yu-Gi-Oh cards. You know what I mean? It's like Blue Eyes White Dragon study. Poof, go.
If you had young men, if you had your say as the education czar, and you had let's just take Americans, but you could even extrapolate to the world, and they had and there were what are the 5 must-read books?
Forget the must-read books.
Okay.
There's one must-do thing.
Must-do thing.
Separate schools by sex.
Really?
It's going to solve 95% of all problems
Just
in public
because less
schools.
distraction? What?
No, it's not just because of that. It's because inside of co-ed schools, everything goes to the denominator of women and girls.
Yeah, that's right.
Women are the teachers, and the rules that they put in place are tailored to girls. Why? Because they understand female physiology, things like this. They don't know shit about boys.
Right.
Now, when you were in school, I bet you got into fights, didn't you?
Yeah.
Did you punch a guy right in the face,
Sure.
Brian? You psychopath.
Yeah, roughhousing
you
and all that shit,
nutcase.
yeah.
Did you shove your friend against the wall because you thought it was funny?
Yeah.
You fucking...
Wedgies. I got
Oh my
wedgies.
God.
I got hung from a locker.
I would have called your mom and said, you're raising a psychopath.
Yeah.
He's here bullying kids, and he's stuffing them in lockers, and he punches them, and it's super common.
It's boys, bro.
It's super common.
boys.
And a teacher walking by who's a male who goes, pay attention, dumbass. There's nothing wrong with that either.
No.
I'd be fine with it. Your kid come home, you're like, Dad, yeah,
He
he
hit me."
smacked me in the back of the head.
Yeah.
The dad's supposed to be like, now you're going to get it again.
Yeah.
That's the whole point, right? And less sex, less drugs, less competition over females, less,
All that
like
shit.
it's actually an environment for learning. And then I cut the fucking school day in half, like
would.
3 hours. That's it. What the hell are you there for? It's babysitting is what it's there for,
Right.
so mommy and daddy can go work. That's why the work day starts the same time school day does.
Right. But how did you build your arsenal? How did you build your?
I don't
sort
give
of-
out my reading list for a reason.
Oh, you don't.
I don't.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. And what is the reason?
Well, the reason is that
You
it's
don't-
possible that I read many controversial books that then would be attributed to me as part of my philosophy, which I don't have.
Yes.
Even though that may
Very
not
smart.
actually be a part of my ultimate philosophy,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
still, because people will begin to attribute that as part of my philosophy, so I don't release it.
So you don't get
They can
pigeonholed.
fucking speculate.
That's fascinating.
They can speculate.
Well, but I'll tell you this: you've had a classical education. You've immersed yourself in the leaders of thought, that have given us the West. I mean,
That's true.
And anybody who doesn't,
Though I don't
have-
particularly care for like continental philosophy or most of the Enlightenment principles, I at least understand why there's an adherence to them.
Yeah.
I just don't think that foundationally it works without some sort of universalized ethics you can point to
yeah,
that are unchanging. Because if they can change,
I
they're
agree.
worthless. They're
I agree.
worthless. That are unchanging, and then you can maybe do something in society. But the thing is like that's the thing which has eroded the most. Is the attacking a universalized form of unchanging ethics. That's what makes these people lose their minds, And it's because they can't justify all their degenerate shit, and that's all they ever want to do.
right. What if I said to you that Marcus Aurelius or Seneca the Stoics were, they seem to be fairly close to Christians, in that they practice a certain kind of self-restriction.
Agreed. Self-restraint. They focus on virtues.
Yes.
They do all sorts of things, and in fact, people have said Christians stole these things from them.
From the Stoics, yeah.
I totally understand. I get it.
Yeah.
My response would be exactly what the Orthodox Church has been saying for thousands of years.
Which
The
is?
truth is written on your heart. And there's many cultures which have come to many of the similar ideals of Christianity before there was Christianity because we're fucking wired to do that. The truth is written on your heart. God didn't make people, to flounder in the dark.
Right,
He made us to search out his truths.
right.
And that's why you saw societies. But
So-
here's my proof.
Yeah,
All of the cultures which are super successful seem to have a reflection of modern day Christian ethics, right?
That's right.
Under Christ, don't they? Where's all the successful fucking atheist cultures? Where's all the successful
Not one.
fucking any of them? None of them.
I can point to the atheist cultures like the Soviet Union.
Dead, destroyed.
Exactly. I mean, we can just keep going.
What about all the successful demon worshiping cultures? Yeah, none of those.
Yeah, they didn't seem to.
Yeah,
really,
the closer they began aligning with Christian ethics, the better and more sophisticated and everything else the culture
That's right.
became.
That's right.
So the thing is like now
I
you
find
could
that
say
fascinating
you could say,
'cause-
well, what about Rome? Well, the Christians took Rome.
That's right. That's what I think is fascinating is
our shit.
the Christianity found its roots in Roman soil. And the Romans were up to their ears, at least the elite.
In demons.
They were up to their ears, and their children were taught by Greek philosophers.
Mm-hmm.
They were very familiar with the Greeks, and somehow the Roman Empire was crumbling from within. And I think that you could make the same argument for what happened when Nietzsche said God is dead. Everybody came up with their own gods. And guess what happens then? They fight it out. All those
Even
man-made
Nietzsche
gods
saw
fight it out.
utility in
course he did.
Christianity
Yeah.
and in organized religion.
That's right.
And when you look, like all of them do, you have to. There's no way around it. And the thing is like, let's just say I'm wrong. Let's just grant it. Let's say it's Alex O'Connor there, and he's like,
Are you willing to consider a 1% chance that you might be wrong, to question your faith or whatever?
sure, let's assume that's 100%. In fact, let's just assume I'm lying about it just for the sake of getting what it is that I
sociopath. Yeah,
want.
yeah.
Just to say, even if that's the case, the end result is still going to be fucking better from your view.
Yeah.
So who cares?
What if I said to you though, like if I just lived like a Stoic, isn't that do I need Christianity or can I live just the Stoic lifestyle and still be just as happy? And can we have a society that's just as successful?
Are you going to run society as a Stoic? Are you going to go into power and then perpetuate your Stoic viewpoints and lifestyle as power of law?
I don't know. Probably hard to do, right?
Yeah, see, as a Christian, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
So maybe it'd be better for you not to be a Stoic.
I don't know that the Stoics talked about charity. I don't know that they talked about
Oh, yeah.
sacrifice and stuff like that.
Sacrifice, duty,
Yeah.
virtues, various things like
So
this.
what is the difference
No
then?
justification for any of it. Just you should do this because it's
Because
it's
it's
just going to be more
because it's a
fulfilling for
better
you.
way.
Yeah, it's a better way. It's more fulfilling for you. But there's no justification or grounding for it.
Right.
You know, there's no. In other words,
There's no law for it. It's just a better way to go, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, and so here's the idea too.
So it doesn't sustain.
What did our founders say? Our founders gave you, initially, they could find no axiomatic justification other than God. They said so themselves. We find the truths to be self-evident,
Self-evident.
right? Self-evident. So now we have an axiom. An axiom is a justification, which is just self-evident,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, and what was the self-evident axiom? That all men are created equal, created
Yeah.
equal
Created equal.
by
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So they couldn't find a justification external to that either.
Yeah.
And these people were like, that's a secular nation. They built a wall. No, it's like, look, the very thing that you claim makes us equal, right? The very thing that you appeal to, our founders wanted equality. Our founders wanted egalitarianism. Our founders wanted to abolish this. The
Yeah.
very thing that they're appealing to that said you're created equal is what? It wasn't me. It wasn't Thomas Jefferson didn't say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that Thomas Jefferson believes
No.
all men should be
That
equal.
God, yeah.
Yeah, so they're giving you a justification. They're saying all roads of our philosophy that justify all of these things that we believe lead back to this one axiom, the one self-evident thing, the one truth that's constant, the one thing that's invariably non-changing.
Yeah.
God.
That's right. And we just seem to always be, when you step away from that, we seem to constantly create sort of this effigy of what the Christian God is. Even the trans movement, the notion of being reborn into a different body, a different name, is a lot like being, reborn into, spiritually, right? So that they seem to borrow that. There's always these bastardized versions. It always looks like a bastardized version of Christianity in a way. Even philosophy seems to come to that conclusion. It's always like, well,
liberals are like, see, they're like Nazis in the fact that they do a blitzkrieg, right? So what they do is you take social norms, just regular social norms that we all take for granted every day. Like, if you have a penis, you're a guy. And if you don't have a penis, you're not a guy.
yeah. And
right?
by the way, if we could just establish that so I can get on with my day.
Right.
Because things are, I'm busy as fuck
Right.
anyway. Like, what do you, that's how I felt. I was like, wait, are you fucking with that? Because I got bills to pay and kids
Right.
to raise. So what are you saying to me right now?
Exactly.
It's like, huh? Like,
Yeah,
we
it's
can't establish
ridiculous.
that? I can't establish 1 + 1 is 2?
But think about how ingenious it kind of is. Because this is completely socially ingrained and it's never questioned, because it's just something which is intuitive that everybody knows
Sure.
instantly within 5 seconds of the living in the observable world, they hit you with Operation Shock and Awe. Oh yeah? Well, what makes them that? What about men who have no penis? Are they still a man? What about men who have an intersex condition? Are they now still men or are they women? And it's within the vagueness and the gray area there, right? That they try, what they're
Hard
trying to do
cases.
is reduce you down to a justification for what isn't. And if there's one exception,
That's right.
then it's not, then it can't be the thing,
Throw
right?
the whole thing out.
Yeah, you got to throw a whole.
It's exactly like
there's-
saying the Bible's bullshit because I can prove there's an inconsistency over here. It's
But
like,
that's how social norms get attacked, is with
Yeah.
the blitzkrieg of you having to justify things,
Yeah.
which you've never had to think about, and you've never had to think about them because they're so fucking obvious. But when you try to justify obvious things, it's actually way harder than you think.
Right.
Like, for instance, you and I can agree the sky is blue.
Yeah.
Why?
mean-
It's like, what?
Yeah.
Well-
Well, if I was Kant, I would say, well, you think it's blue, but actually you don't have the visual apparatus to see the real color because that's
Perhaps.
All right.
Yeah, perhaps.
All right. And to which I go, holy fuck, dude! You go do that over there. I've got to put food on the table.
Right.
I got to raise my kids so that they're smiling, warm, full, and happy. That's,
Well, see, I think you bank what you touched on there. It's more important in many ways than all of the kind of the philosophical justifications we're making, the talks of ideology, things like this. I think what you just honed in on there, most important message of all. And one of the reasons I think I became very popular in the political sphere. They don't give a fuck. People want to feed their kids. They want to fuck their wife, right? They want to have more kids, and they want to feed them too. And they want to have grandkids. And they want to relax by their pool with their feet kicked up, or they want to relax on a vacation with their feet kicked up, drinking a beer and enjoying themselves. Yeah. What they don't want to hear about is how this fishneck stocking freak who's walking in says, "It's ma'am." They don't want nothing to do with that shit. No. And so the thing is, it's like, I'm fine with the intuitive appeal to that. I'm okay with it.
Me too.
I'm totally fine with it. I'm like, you know what?
Intuitive.
Yeah, I'm like, you know what? If you find that completely disgraceful and disgusting and want to socially ostracize it, the first thing you think in your head is kill it with fire. I get it. Like, I fucking get it. The first thing that comes to your mind is like, burn it with fire. I got it. I get it. I understand it. Yeah. I'm just pointing out that, like, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with, if you want to legislate that way, go ahead. Because the truth is, it's like 90% of the time, I'm thinking the same shit you're thinking. I'm thinking, you know what sounds good for dinner? Bacon sandwich tonight sounds a little bit better than spaghetti does. Yeah. So those are the thoughts that are mostly in my head, not how I do epistemic justification for my worldview. And so if most people are intuitively going through life and understand, hey, this is a serious fucking problem, I'm like, you know, I'll just appeal to that. I'm okay with that.
I also think, though, is what I was talking about yesterday, part of what the West figured out was how to create a society where people who live under representative government, under the Bill of Rights, under the Constitution, under checks and balances and stuff, and for that matter, under at least the scaffolding that Christianity has delivered, seem to get closer to who they could be versus who they have to be. And most of the world has had to choose who they have to be and have had to forfeit who they could be. That's another way of saying, I don't think any society besides the Western societies, especially the United States, has been able to help mass numbers of people realize their potential. And there's something about watching somebody win a gold medal, build an incredible business, play incredible music, write incredible music, do an incredible painting, make an amazing movie. Those are the things not only that we stay alive for, but those are the things that we all say, wow, that's human beings at their best. That is the cornerstone of a culture I'm going to point to and say, let's go America. One of the reasons that we have the most powerful army is not because we're good at violence. It's just because innovation, people are allowed to innovate. People get rewarded for coming up with a better way to do something. And that happens to bleed over into our military as well. Mm-hmm. And I also think that that's something that we always seem to forget. And that had to be figured out. That shit had to be figured out. Somebody like James Madison had to sit around and go, if we're going to form our own government, how do we avoid factions from taking over other factions? How do we stop a cabal of men, always men, who are really good at violence and really strategic from taking all the fucking power? And those men like John Jay and Alexander Hamilton and James Madison and, for that matter, Thomas Jefferson, all those young men, most of whom were in their 30s, figured out a way to keep power from concentrating into one man or one group's hands. That is called solving the political problem. That's fucking incredible. That was actually, in my opinion, it feels like it was divinely inspired. If you want to talk about the greatest idea of philosophy, I think the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Federalist Papers were right there at the top of the fucking heap. And I don't think it would have been possible without the idea of something like a Christian God. I really don't. I think it informed the entire, back to what you said, all men are created equal. Well, under who? Under the eyes of God, right? We're all brothers and sisters, all of the same moral worth. And part of what I think is really important too is it ain't just about building bridges. It's not just about guns. It's not just about mechanics. To have an interesting culture, you have to have, Shakespeare, the great writings of Aeschylus and Sophocles, the things that got us here. all those moral lessons and all those incredible stories, all that great painting. That's how you create an interesting culture, a creative culture, and so a strong culture. Because creativity, when people are allowed to profit from their imagination, you have creativity. And when you have creativity, you have all kinds of different strengths. That's a different kind of strength, right? And that's where I think you really get to a point where you have a society that isn't, with all due respect, Somalia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, the countries that seem to not be as strong, that don't come up with the kind of innovation we do, and for that matter, Russia even.
But where's our threshold?
There should have been music over that.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean? With wind blowing my hair
Yeah.
back. I should have been on a horse riding in slow motion as my voiceover.
That needs to have sad piano.
And you should have had
Telling
one
you.
tear, dude. I wish you had one tear just coming down
just
your cheek.
down. Go get some water. We're reshooting this whole thing.
Dude,
We're reshooting.
but it's a blood tear.
Yeah, it's a blood tear.
It's
Just
a blood tear. Andrew Wilson cries
Cries blood.
Fucking cry. Viral moment. Fucking cries blood. And then
so
you just
funny.
go, now you understand, my son.
Yeah,
and
now you
pull
get it.
your mask off and you're Jesus.
Oh no, we just moved right into
Too
like
much?
you took it right where it didn't need to
I
go
went too
immediately.
far.
Yeah,
I went too far.
Went too far.
I turned you into your savior.
Now it's 2 blood tears.
Now it's two blood. Sorry.
Now it's two
Sorry.
blood tears.
Stigmata.
Yeah, that's true.
All
Just
right.
instantly.
What were you gonna say? Fuck.
I was just saying, I think that there's a lot to that, except for the idea of thresholds. Like, what we've done is say, okay, well, yeah, we're really innovative too at porn, though, right?
What to what?
At porn, we're pretty innovative there, aren't we?
Yeah, that's true.
We're pretty innovative at distributing it. We're pretty innovative at making it. We're
Yeah.
pretty innovative at making sure that it gets where it needs to. We're pretty innovative at making sure your 10-year-old can watch it.
Yeah, goddamn right.
Like,
we
we're
are.
pretty fucking innovative.
Yeah.
So it's like, with all that idealism of, hey, man, we're allowing this great innovation has led to all this cultural progress and this and that. It's like, that's true.
And the dopamine scroll.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. But also, what fucking good is any of that without the ethical foundation? It's just totally fucking worthless because, yeah, sure. And now we're innovative at CP. We can distribute it the best possible way. You know, we can condition people better than ever.
Yeah.
We can make sure that they live the longest lives possible to watch more of it. Right? It's like just the idea of innovation and being rewarded for it, and these that's only the one side of the coin. I agree in principle.
Yep.
Right? I'm a capitalist through and through, king of the grift, baby. I love that shit.
Let's go.
Right? Give me more of that.
Number
cash.
4 show.
I
Number
can't-
4 show on
Yeah, I
YouTube.
can't fucking
The
wait.
Crucible.
When I get back and gloat about the Rogan thing, the cash gonna pour in. I'm gonna grab those hundreds and shit.
I told you, didn't I tell you last night?
Just-
I said to you last night, I go, dude, you're about to be rich as fuck.
So just
Yes.
rub my face on them, right? And send me more.
Yeah.
Capitalism's fantastic, absolutely. And if you're a great entertainer, you're going to be rewarded greatly for that. All I'm saying is, without that foundation, that innovation could also be a source of great and horrific evil as well.
Fuck
And
yeah,
that's
good.
why I'm saying,
Damn right it could.
take your side, which is correct. I want to live in a capitalist nation, that's for damn sure. And I want to live in an innovative nation, innovative medicines and innovative this, innovative that. I want all that shit. But I also want the social degeneracy and the madness to be completely curtailed.
Yeah.
And so the thing is it's like, I think we can have both.
Yeah.
I feel like we can have our cake and eat it too.
Sure.
So,
Sure. And that would be Christian ideals, right?
yeah, Christian ethics and Christian foundational idealism.
Yeah.
And it's like, without that, we got nothing ultimately.
You think it's unpopular because it's just no fun? People just are guarded of their fun.
You're like, oh, you're going to poke in here and see if I'm fucking banging my wife the right way?
Yeah.
No, the idea is not to poke your head into people's bedrooms and say, oh, are you having sex missionary in here?
Yeah.
Is there too much? There's a little doggy style. Looks like no. That's
Yeah.
that's theocratic nonsense.
Yeah.
The idea instead is to take the state's apparatus and power away from magnifying, enhancing, and curating cultural diseases through messaging. And that's what they do with homosexuality, gay marriage, in many ways, OnlyFans and pornography. They stimulate these things, maybe not directly, but in indirect ways with propaganda. just alternative family metrics and every type of family being permitted in and of itself cultivates that kind of terrible messaging. And so if you move the government out and you really, I want the government to be cultivating messaging like this. There's billboards on the street that show a man walking hand in hand with a woman, and they got their kids, and it says, something like, God bless the American family. Some shit like that, right? Oh my God, it's terrible. Am I going to be able to go home and fuck my wife, doggy? Yeah, you still can, bro. No one's going to stop you from doing that. Yeah. I'm just pointing out that if we utilize that kind of propaganda, right, and we, from the top down, started to reinforce what we wanted to see from the bottom up, which is what people are demanding from the bottom up anyway, right? Let's promote that instead.
You're going to have, so you're still going to have Americans who protest that, right? They're going to say, I have a right to express myself.
Yeah, then that's when we have propaganda that shows like protesters getting their head kicked in. It says, because this is un-American. No, I'm kidding. I'm
Andrew,
kidding.
You're losing me.
I'm kidding.
Andrew.
I'm kidding.
Well, but I think that somebody, C.S. Lewis said that Christianity, he kind of said something interesting in Mere Christianity. He said, Christianity is a fighting religion.
Yeah.
You're in a satanic realm, and your job is to be the saboteur. Kind of an interesting thing. So a lot
Your
of
job is to slash the tires, pour dirt in the gas tank, to cut the bridges. But why? It's you're buying time.
Yeah.
The whole goal is to buy time, right?
Yeah.
The more time I buy you, the more chance you can be saved.
Well, or at least I think, without even getting into the other stuff, you can. I believe in freedom of expression, equal rights, all those things. But I do think that there is something about fighting for an ideal. And at least you're very upfront and honest about the ideal you're fighting for. Everybody's fighting. That's what I always go back to.
Yeah.
Everybody's fighting for something. Most people actually don't think about it too deeply because it gets way too inconvenient because they have to confront choices. They've got to make a choice. And the truth is most of us just go, yeah, well, everything's everything, so I don't want to do that over there. Hey, we're all good. Because I don't want to get into that. It's really uncomfortable to start talking about certain things. But at least you're saying, hey, whether you know it or not, you're embracing an ideal.
Yes.
And you're
and a
embracing
dogma.
And a dogma.
And a framework.
And if you don't define it for yourself, somebody else will.
Yes.
And that's what happens. So you're very clear on what you are fighting for, which it essentially is something. Well, it is the Christian tenets.
Yes. Well, it's not just that. It's creating this line where I understand political power has now become a zero-sum game. And if Christians aren't in charge, people are going to be in charge of Christians. And if that's the case, you need to tell me what justifies them to be in charge and not Christians. And if you can't, then guess who I want in charge?
Yeah.
The Christians.
Why? Because Christians will be thrown to the lions, right?
Yeah, thrown to the lion. I don't believe that you can really draw great ethical standards external that grounding framework. And I think that Christians are better ultimately at ruling anyway because of that. And yes, if we utilize state propaganda for things like families, we utilize state propaganda for things like moving, separating schools between sex again, things like this, right? What are these great harms anyway? Like, what is the great harm here? You talk to a progressive, you say, what would actually be the problem with that? And they're like, I'm like, where's the harm? Like, where the harm is, some green-haired homo, right, he's gonna get uppity.
Please, gay person, please. Andrew.
Oh, I'm sorry. Some green-haired homosexual.
Please, it's homosexual. Thank you.
Yeah.
Please don't abbreviate.
Yeah.
Damn it.
He's gonna be like, I want to have a different family, and that sounds offensive to.
He sounds like the waitress.
Yeah, but
last night.
it's like, why do we give a shit what you think though? Outlier? Like you're an outlier. I don't give a shit what you think.
Well, no, because you have to protect the minorities from the
Why?
tyranny of the majority.
Yeah, but see what I mean? Like,
don't you?
But think about what you're saying here.
Yeah.
The minority being the 49% and the majority being the 51%. Not the minority being 0.1%.
No,
That's not what we were supposed to be protecting
but
ourselves
the
from.
individual can't be subjected to the collective. Like that is a fundamental tenet of
What do you mean?
Well,
like patriotism?
yeah, as an individual, I should be allowed to, if you believe in freedom of expression,
Yeah.
the First Amendment, which I do, I think that you have to then allow people without, you have to allow people to express themselves. And one of the reasons I think that I'm a big supporter of that, whether you're gay or whatever, is because a lot of those people give us the goodies. They're creative. They tend to be the creatives. They certainly create some beautiful things,
They can still create those things.
Yeah.
But I
you
don't
don't
want
have to have
don't want normalizations of their values though.
Well, that's a different subject, but I think artists a lot of times disturb. They do things that are kind of like so you wouldn't censor. You would just how would you deal
I would
with
use
that?
a top-down formula utilizing our government to create propaganda, as it were, which reaffirms the worldview of Christian ethics, and it would make society a million times better.
Is that propaganda though, or is that your version of truth?
Well, if you're a person who's against it, it's propaganda.
Right.
If you're a person who's for it, right, this is the truth.
Yeah.
And so the thing is like, I'm fine with you calling it propaganda. Patriotism's propaganda, and it's great.
Yeah.
The Pledge of Allegiance, total propaganda.
Yeah.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, right? You know it, inside and out. How's that not propaganda again?
Well, it's certainly that human beings, to make a society work, have to agree on a story. So I have to agree that this dollar is worth $1.
Yeah, but you're literally putting your right hand over your heart and
Yeah.
you're pledging your allegiance
Yes.
to a
Yes.
nation, and you do it you affirm it every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
You remember every word. You remember every note, right? You remember why? Because your allegiance is to your nation first. I get that's like 1984 shit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it was great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was fucking fantastic.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, bring that back. I want more of that 1984 like shit because that was great stuff. That sort of propaganda, I think is fantastic. I think that we need dogmas.
But there's a difference between 1984 and what you're advocating for.
Of course.
Because 1984 is for the state, fealty to the state no matter what.
What
And
are you pledging allegiance to?
Right, and you would be pledging allegiance to a higher truth, which would be essentially, your hands on the Bible, right?
Well, and the flag.
And the flag.
Of the United States of America. And then, of course, to the republic.
Well, you
and
sound
why are we doing this?
old-fashioned as fuck, don't
Yeah,
you?
but why are we pledging allegiance to the republic for which it stands? Well, in case one of these states gets at a fucking line, decides it's gonna do something against the feds, we know we pledged our allegiance, don't we?
Yeah,
Don't tell me that stuff doesn't work. It worked great.
yeah.
Why wouldn't we do that for other things we want to see normalized in society? Why shouldn't it be like, I pledge my allegiance that there's only 2 genders, and that you're all a bunch of fucking weirdos? Tell me, how in the world could that ever make a worse society?
Well-
Like, who's going to be like, I couldn't live my fullest life because somebody told me that there was only 2 fucking genders?
Well, what would you do about people who do want to live their own sort of, they want to dye their hair and pierce their face and
Yeah, what about them? So if we go look at the 1930s and the 40s and the 50s, right? Where were all those people? Got told they couldn't pierce their face, they couldn't dye their hair.
Yeah.
What happened to them? Oh, I'll tell you what happened to them. They were fucking fine. Nothing happened to them. That's what happened
That's
to them.
right.
That's why all these people are like, we had just as many trans
Well,
kids
yeah.
in 1934
Yeah,
as we do now. And I go, yeah, how come they weren't all killing themselves? Sounds like stuffing their asses in the closet was the best thing we could have done for them because they didn't kill themselves, and now they do. That's really weird. It's the same exact thing with this. Yeah. Oh, what are we going to tell all the blue-haired freaks who you can't cut yourself no more? You can't, put demon horns on your face. You can't tattoo yourself all to hell. Let's just say we put all that in place, just for the sake of argument. Yeah, so what? Who gives a shit? Like, really, who's that going to affect? To the point where it's like, they just can't live. I was going to have a full life, but I couldn't implant demon horns on my head.
I don't think you want the government deciding what you can put on your face. I think
But we want them to decide that we can't read porn?
I think that you have to be careful about how much power do you want the federal government, even if it's a Christian government, to have? Like, you may want them to have all the power, but those theocracies don't seem to work out that well, because what happens is men will hijack their version of what Christianity is, right?
How come it's always called a theocracy, unless it's applied at the local level, then it's fine. Like, for instance, blue laws. Oh, you can't mow your yard on Sunday because, that's a church day.
Yeah.
Or you can't buy alcohol on Sunday because it's a church day.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a theocracy. It's not a theocracy. And by the way, nobody in those areas gives a shit. They're
Yeah.
like, that's the county, right? In this county, on Sunday, that's a church day. You can't buy liquor. Are you telling them they're not allowed to do that? No, you say then.
That's usually communal consensus,
But
right?
you see what I mean? But this is
Yeah.
too. How's
Yeah.
this not the same thing? Communal consensus. People don't want porn anymore, so they're like, look, enough.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
It's the same exact thing. It's just
Well,
that
you
scale.
do have that anyway. In Texas, you can't watch porn unless you can prove your age and go through a whole thing, right? I know.
Oh, no.
Which, by the way, I think is actually a great law
Of
because I think
course.
it's really bad for kids. Because I got a 14-year-old, and I can promise you, he's figured out a way to jack that system.
Well, and imagine, the fucking degenerates who are always trying to convince us of this shit. It's like, let's just lay it out, how they actually say it. They try to use rose-colored words, but what they're really saying is, I want to be able to fap to weird fucking pornography, and you're not supposed to
I
be
wanna
able to tell me
fap.
I can't. That's what they're saying.
yeah.
And you're like, no, we're not gonna in our country, we're not gonna like make all this porn anymore. So you're gonna have to go fap to some other shit.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can't. How could you take away my fapability? And it's like that's what when you break it down, that's what these people are arguing for.
Yeah.
My right to fap to whatever type of porn I want shall not be infringed. And it's like, yeah, we can infringe on it. and
Don't you
fuck
have to allow for that if you want to allow for the other freedoms?
No,
No. Really?
yeah.
Don't you have to allow?
Like, for instance, I don't have to allow for 16-year-olds to vote in order to own a gun.
Right.
So how come I have to allow? How come 16-year-olds don't get to vote, but I can still own a gun? It's like I don't allow that freedom. I can still have this one.
we make those judgments based on there is a timeline. I mean, you got to decide when are you an actual adult. Well, when
And
is
it's
your brain
arbitrary,
formed?
right?
It's not necessarily arbitrary. There are certain things about, the consensus would be 18, you're physically mature enough, etc.
You're not physically mature enough at 17, 364 days, though?
We make these mean aggregates because you almost have to,
Right.
Right.
Now, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a mean aggregate, but there is a. I think we will allowing individuals maximum liberty and personal responsibility. And then thus, so if I give you all the personal responsibility and I'm going to give you freedom as an individual, you
Yeah.
want to put the horns on your face? Awesome. You
Sure.
want to get tattoos? Go ahead and do all that. Now, you want to get into porn? Go ahead. Now, here's the thing. What I'm going to say to you as an older person is you can do all that if that's the way you want to be an individual, if that's how you want to negotiate the age-old problem of individuality. It ain't going to work out. And it ain't going to work out because chances are society, even if they pretend they're not Christian or conservative, they're just not going to have you babysit their kids, step into their office and work. There's going to be 1,000 reasons why it ain't going to be a good long-term plan, right? It's probably the same thing as you spend $300,000 in education on gender studies, and now you can't get a job. So if you could just make sure my muffin is warm, and I'll take my latte with a little more milk and stuff like that. That's kind of what happens. So
Where's the personal responsibility here, though?
well, I would just allow people. I would allow people to make any choice they want. You can still fight for a society that holds Christian ethics and values at a paramount, at a premium. But I don't think you have to then restrict individuals can do whatever they want. Let them make their own choices.
But they can't.
But I think.
But they can't even under your view. Do they have to show up for jury duty?
Yes.
Can they be drafted?
Yeah. Well, no, but they used
They
to.
can. No, they can now. You sign up for a draft now.
Yep.
You're 18 years old. You go sign up for a draft.
Yep.
Of course, only if you're a man.
Yep.
Right? So you can be conscripted by the government to go fight its wars.
Yep.
You have to show up for
Certain
jury
things that
duty.
you have to do.
There's all
Driver's
sorts.
license,
Yeah, there's all sorts of other duties which you have to be associative with. Why is it that we have any of these duties then? And why is it we can't just extend them a little bit to things which are so detrimental to humanity that there's no reason to have them around? Like, for instance, drugs. It's like, okay, you want to shoot up with a needle? You know what I mean? Why don't you get put in the town square? They beat you a little bit. Just like 10 lashes like they used to. Corporal punishment. Just wham, wham, wham. No jail, no nothing. You just kind of get your ass whipped a little bit.
Did you ever hear Lee Kuan Yew? Lee Kuan Yew is the Prime Minister of Singapore. And Charlie Rose says, I mean, you guys you hang people.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. And he goes, but I mean, is there a jury? He goes, no jury, just a judge. And they were like, but isn't that barbaric? He goes, barbaric. We hang 7 people a year. 7. We have 0 drug problems. 0. How is your country doing with that?
Yeah.
How many children are in orphanages or in foster care because their parents are drug addicts or are in jail?
How about
How many people have been
Duterte?
killed?
Little Duterte.
Well, now-
Little Duterte
no,
goes a long way.
No. Right. Hey, Andrew, you can't have vigilante groups. But see, I love these discussions because you keep pressing and you keep saying, look, whether you know it or not, you live within parameters.
Yeah.
It's what I wanted to start this with, and you know,
And that's what we're fighting about.
That's it.
And the thing is like, look, and
so
if we're
maximum
not here,
freedom is not a virtue.
no,
Individual
maximum. Look,
choice.
duty is the ultimate virtue,
Mm.
and even you have to agree with me, right? You have maximum freedom right now to leave your family.
Yeah.
What's virtuous about that?
Nothing.
But if you had a duty to take care of your family and that was reinforced by law,
Yeah.
how's that not virtuous?
And it is reinforced by law, isn't it? Like you got to pay alimony. You
It
gotta
used
pay
to be
child support.
really enforced by law, where you'd go to jail if you
See,
abandoned your family.
Personally, I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, well, those were called coverture laws, and feminists got rid of them.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's called coverture, covered in. So
I'm-
you were covered in your husband. If your husband left, went to jail.
Yeah, and so one of the biggest problems we have is fatherlessness.
Yeah.
And people talk about the black community or something. It's like it's
got to
not
read
about
Occult
racism.
Feminism, everyone who's watching. You learn about this stuff. But the wife who's sitting right over there, she wrote it. Great book.
What's it called?
Cult Feminism.
I'll read it.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a copy. We'll give you a copy.
Give me a copy.
Yeah. So the thing is like, look, these laws, the coverture laws, things like this, when we talk about duty, exemplifying duty,
Just quickly, there's
Yeah.
nothing submissive about your wife. You know what I mean? Like she's her own person, which I think is the fact that you wrote that book. Just in case people think you're just some meek woman sitting in the back like this, like, ooh, look at Andrew. Oh, sorry, Andrew.
I don't know. I take all our money and spend it on guns. So
Damn.
yeah.
Damn, bro. That's kind of macho.
And my justification for that is, well, I took care of your fucking ass for years. Now give me that check. And I exclusively spend it on guns.
Exclusively.
Okay. That's why I always tell people, buy more copies of her books, because I'm buying more guns, more ammo.
Zombie apocalypse. What are the 3 guns you're taking?
Who gives it? I just want the guns. I don't even care. Like, you know what I'm going to do in the zombie apocalypse?
What?
I'm not going to let other like survival groups kill them all. I'm just going to go and just keep collecting guns. Now they're all free.
You just like having them.
I just like having them. I like looking at them.
You like an armory. You like to
Yeah.
polish them.
I do. It's true. I do. I'd be looking for some rare weird shit too. You know what I mean? Just to like, wouldn't you do that? Like, you know what I don't ever see? How come nobody's ever like, oh, that whole city's infested with zombies? Why don't they go get like a 1700s battleship and go along the coast and just cannonade these fucking... That would be
Cannon
the
the shit
sick...
out of 'em,
Yeah,
yeah.
that would be fucking sick. Just
Yeah.
cannonade a whole zombie horde.
We could.
Yeah, they're coming up and
could.
down the coast. You got your,
Yeah.
you just fucking cannonade them.
6 shooters.
Yeah.
fucking
You
sniper
ever seen
rifles.
what that looks like? One of those cannonades from
Oh.
one of those big naval ships? You could take out a whole coastal city.
It's unbelievable,
Yeah.
man.
It's
The-
like, well, I
they're the
wanna
size
see
of a
that on a
Mack
horde.
truck, some of those shells. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Oh, but you can't own an AR-15. Private merchants could own those, but you can't own an AR-15.
Yeah.
That's too much firepower for one man, isn't it? Just a little too much.
A little too much. A little too much.
You could have cannonade their whole fucking school, but that's just a little too much
Yeah.
firepower, that AR.
Just a bit too much.
That hopped up 22. It's just ridiculous.
I can't wait to see you debate some of these guys when they set it up. It's going to be interesting.
Oh, yeah, we got a lot coming up.
Are you going to be
man.
mean or are you going to be polite?
Well, I usually just match energy. So,
Yeah.
like, maybe I called those guys fucking idiots here on the program, which is fair. They probably call me fucking idiot on their program, too. But if we're debating,
Yeah.
I match energy.
Yeah, better to stick
So
to
if you're treating me very well, I'm going to treat you very well.
Yeah.
If you act like a dick, and the reason I act like a dick back then is because I think it actually defuses it. So people treat you how you teach them to treat you. So if people think they can get away, like many of these atheists like Dillahunty did with treating you like shit and you just take it, guess
Yeah.
what they do?
Yeah.
But
You're not, yeah, Hitchens was so condescending. But you're not interested in making friends here. You're
No,
interested in...
I'm not your buddy.
No.
But I also am not here to attack you.
Yeah.
I am here to debate the issues with you. If it's the case that you decide to be a condescending asshole, it's like, well, then I'm going to do that back.
Yeah.
And all the sewing circle Christians who say, it's not very Christian of you. You know, just remember that you're in the sidelines. You're in the audience, and, you know, you're not of much consequence because you're not actually doing anything, so
Right.
just sit there.
Right. Anything for us to look out for besides is it cult feminism?
Yeah,
That's
Cold
the book?
Feminism.
Okay.
You guys, everyone can go to debateuniversity.com. You want to get a debate course that I made?
wow.
It's fantastic.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
DebateUniversity.com? I'll go to that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You can also catch me, of course, on The Crucible and then my daily show on Rumble, The Extravaganza. So,
Damn, extravagant. When does The Crucible come out? How often?
The Crucible. Well, it's whenever I can do a show, which is when I do. But it's always been that way.
Is Extravaganza or Crucible the one that's
The Extravaganza is a daily show. That's
and
every
that's been
day.
crushing?
Yeah, that does real well. And then that's every day at 5 p.m. Eastern. And then you can catch The Crucible usually 2-3 times a week.
So you live stream the Extravaganza,
Yeah, and I live stream The Crucible too.
and when you're traveling, you do it as well.
No, I have a fill-in usually when I'm traveling. So
And do you take the daily events and basically pontificate?
we
on them?
do, and I take all the daily retarded shit that people do and laugh at it too because I think it's funny.
It's great.
Yeah,
Well, you got a fan in me, my friend.
you got to come.
I
You got to come
will.
on the Extravaganza. You'll like it.
I'd love
Dave Smith was our first guest.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like trying to bring Dave out of his shell, you know.
Yeah.
So we were playing funny shit, and I would look at him and I'd be like, "Come on, Dave, just fucking laugh, Dave. Just laugh, Dave."
Love
you know?
Dave. I love
and
Dave.
he played into it pretty well. Like he was a
Good.
good sport.
Yeah,
He was a
Dave's
good
great.
sport.
I love Dave.
I do too. I
Andrew
like
Wilson,
him too.
yeah, he's great. And you guys have had, it's really fun to listen to that debate.
What's funny is like against each other, it's a great debate, but when we're on the same side of an issue, it's fucking brutal for the opposition. It's
yeah.
really fun to watch that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you get a lot out of debate, man, and I think you just get better and better at it when you do it. And most people aren't willing to put their ideas into that arena.
Yeah.
And that's what you're always willing to do, which is what makes a huge difference, which is what has led to your well-earned success. And I'm just looking forward to flying on your private jet as you get bigger and bigger, dude. You know what I'm saying?
Well, get
And
to
you're-
the back of the jet, Brian.
Yeah, that's true, dude.
Get to the back of the
Get in
jet.
back of the jet. You're paying for dinner next time.
That's
I'll tell you that
right.
much fucking. I'm done with this shit.
Well, thank you so much for having me
You're the
on
best,
today,
brother.
man.
That
I
is-
appreciate
It's
it.
so good to fucking finally,
Yeah, it was good to meet you,
hang,
too.
hang in person.
Good to meet you too, and for all of you out there who are watching this in Bryan Callen's audience, who is now my audience, you have been conquered by the Crucible. We hope to see you all over there to visit us, and of course, from everybody out there, the Crucible is watching, showing big support here, treated very well at this podcast.
There it is, baby. And I'll see you guys. Where am I going to be? Denver. I'll be in Greenville. That's Friday, Saturday. That's tomorrow and Saturday. But where am I going to be after that on the 19th and 20th? Do you know? Damn, I'm the worst with this shit. You are the worst. Oh, I'll be at Desert Ridge Improv I'll be in Arizona. No, I'm in Arizona at the end of the month. Just put the graphic. Fuck, Arizona at the end of the month, February 30th. I don't fucking know. And then God damn it. I'm the worst. All right, go to BRYANCALLEN.com. I'm done with this. We're out. I'm so bad at self-promotion. I have none of my dates. You are the worst.
Terrible.